On the first day of transfer portal, it just gave to me 3 linebackers, 2 wide receivers, and a running back with over 1,000 yards last season. It's transfer portal season, it's coaching changing season, and more importantly, it's bowl game season. Let's go.
All my blessings, 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 all my blessings.
I need my blessings every penny, daily counting every single one, I'm seeing plenty. Level up and watch that beater turn into a Bentley. See I'm stunning some.
First off, I hope everybody had a very merry Thanksgiving, a good turkey day, enjoyed your jellies and your jams and your turkeys and your stuffings and your potatoes and whatever the hell else you have, and that it was absolutely delicious and good family times, friend times, however you choose to enjoy it. Let's start with the conference championship games. The 2 big ones did not necessarily go as we thought they did, and everything else pretty much fell into place. So let's start with that Friday night Pac-12 championship game as number 4 USC fell to number 11 Utah 47-24, the second loss they take in the season. However, let's remember the first time they lost to Utah was on a 2-point conversion on the Utes' home field, and it was very much a back-and-forth game. Had they not got it, they probably would have lost the game. Coming down inside the last minute there, Jordan Addison was banged up, so Caleb Williams couldn't quite get them down the field without his top field stretcher, and that's how they lost the first time. In this rematch, Caleb Williams was bloodied up to start earlier on there. He had a finger injury. Later on, he couldn't run at all. He busted his leg. Something's going on. He'll probably miss the bowl game, which would be horribly unfortunate. Do not want to see that. He finished 28 for 41 for 363 yards passing, 3 touchdowns and a pick. His rushing totals got completely destroyed as he was getting sacked later on in the game, just completely racked up there because he had a 59-yard rush at one point earlier in the game. They did jump out to a quick 14-0 lead, USC did, as they did in the game earlier in the season. So you're kind of going, whoa, buddy, is Utah going to make a leap here, or is USC going to kind of make good and polish them off here and take an early lead and kind of ride that towards the end of the game? But Utah kind of did fight back here. It was a tie game at the half, 17-17. Utah able to be very physical there. Now, USC obviously giving up big chunks of yards, but they were able to kind of steady the ship here. USC not able to score much after the first few possessions. But again, Caleb Williams bottled up, not able to run later on, and that made just a tremendous difference. It completely changed the ball game, and Utah just went after him. And there's not much that could be done. The offensive line was having struggles. The center went out in the fourth quarter. Austin Jones, the running back, went down in the fourth quarter, I believe, as well. Of course, they were starting to get, things were starting to get away from them at that point. But just, oh my goodness, they were so close. They were so close to staying in this ball game. And just a tough throw, a tough pick that you don't normally see from Caleb Williams, down 16 points, still kind of in the ball game, to kind of salt it away from Utah and turn it into a blowout. Tooley on the defense, the leading sack leader in the country, was just kind of taken away and schemed against, which is, of course, a problem if no one else is able to get pressure on there. So just the defense is completely taken advantage of, and one-dimensional, not even one-dimensional offense, just Caleb stuck in the pocket trying to throw the football, and Utah just completely destroyed him after he was banged up. Would the game have been different if he was healthy? I mean, quite frankly, yes. Him being able to move out of the pocket, throw the ball down the field, would it have turned into a shootout? And most certainly. Cam Rising looked a lot better, 22 for 34, 310, and 3 touchdowns. He looked a lot better in this game than he had the last couple when he was a little banged up, a little hobbled. It's probably what led to their loss against Oregon. But Utah's Pac-12 champs for back-to-back years. Of course, they crushed Oregon twice last year in a few weeks span, beating USC here twice. Just a thin margin and an injury in the 2 games. So the Pac-12 again left on the doorstep of the playoffs here. But a good win for Utah, and unfortunate for USC. Caleb Williams is one of the 4 finalists for the Heisman. CJ Stroud, Max Duggan, Stetson Bennett is the 4th, and that ceremony will be held this Saturday to see which of those 4 pulled down that award. I still think it should be Caleb Williams. His stat line would have been a little thicker here. He did not lose this football game, and he certainly did not lose the game against Utah. They'd still be in the running here. C.J. Stroud didn't quite get it done. Let's get to Max Duggan here. Stetson Bennett just fine in his own right. We'll get to him in just a second. TCU Kansas State went into overtime, and it sure looked like TCU scored in overtime. They got jammed up down there on the goal line. It looked like they were reviewing a fumble there, and it looked like the ball was extended past the goal line before it was fumbled and recovered by TCU. They had 2 more shots at the end zone, were not able to punch it in. There's a lot of discussion on whether there should have been a QB sneak rather than a couple handoffs to score the ball. They did go for it on 4th and goal, did not make it. So all Kansas State had to do was kick a field goal to win the game, which they did. 31-28 was the final there, and just a fist fight coin flip game. It was just a coin flip game. So TCU ultimately stayed in the 3 spot, even though they lost that game in the rankings, and stayed in the playoffs there in the playoff spot, and will be in the playoffs. This Kansas State defense has been kind of undercover really good this season. What they've been able to do as far as generating pressure. A couple of these guys will go to the NFL, defensive ends, couple guys on the defensive line. And they were able to really do some damage to TCU, which is really dependent on Quentin Johnston and the Max Duggan connection there at wide receiver. Kendre Miller has been great on the ground for the Horned Frogs as of late as well, and he was bottled up a bit, 4.8 yards per carry on 17 carries for 82 yards and a touchdown, but really kind of contained there. Duggan had to really will this one through. His receivers were not very helpful at all. Quentin Johnston had 4 catches for 139 yards, big chunks every single time, but no one else had more than 30 yards. Only one other guy had 4 catches, just not a lot going there. Duggan was 18 for 36, 251 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. 15 carries for 110 yards and a touchdown. Some of that was probably taken away due to sack yardage coming out of the rushing total. He had a great run down the sideline in the 4th quarter to set up a touchdown. Just an excellent job. He was so banged up, he was having trouble getting off the mat multiple times. He was bleeding from his elbow at one point. He looked shaken up in the head and the shoulder and the wrist, just all kinds of stuff. Just completely beaten to death in this particular game and just could not quite win it. But he should certainly have a shot at the Heisman as well. Just funny that he didn't win the quarterback battle to start the season and now has this team in the playoffs. It's just really astounding. Will Howard started for Kansas State, 18 for 32, 199, 2 touchdowns. He only scampered a couple times, did have a rushing touchdown. He doesn't run quite like Adrian Martinez would if he was in the ball game, but Adrian can't throw the damn ball. So arguably Will Howard is the better quarterback here. Deuce Vaughn, all 6 of him is finally getting used as a weapon as the year is coming to a close. And the receiver position, a couple targets going his way, 2 catches for 30 yards, 26 carries for 130 and a touchdown, doing a great job there. And the Wildcats just managing to do everything they can to really frustrate Max Duggan and create pressure there, and just doing a good job. TCU does a great job on the defensive end as well. 3 sacks by that defense. Kansas State will look good in their bowl game, and TCU, I'm glad they're still in the playoffs, and I'm glad they didn't move, because really I think they won that ball game, or at least scored a touchdown in the first overtime that would have put Kansas State having to score a touchdown to continue it. So it's just really interesting circumstance there. And unfortunate, there's been a lot of bad refereeing this college football season. And it's a good thing it didn't ultimately affect anything in that particular game. Moving on to the Big Ten, Michigan, 43-22 winners over Purdue. And the Boilermakers did everything they could to hang around in this game. Now, Aiden O'Connell didn't throw a touchdown pass, had a couple picks, but was 32 for 47 for 366, doing everything he could there. Devin Maccabee, 4.2 yards per rush on 17 carries. The ground game has not been an asset for Purdue as of late, but he seemed to he ripped off a big run at one point as they tried to do something against the Wolverines there. Charlie Jones, 13 catches for 162 yards. He's still one of the best receivers and least talked about guys in the entire country, and he's very dangerous in this game. Michigan couldn't do much to stop him at all. J.J. McCarthy was 11 for 17 for 161 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 pick. One of his best throws of the whole game was followed up by that interception. So you got some good and some bad with him. Again, he's now going to win 2 games against the best teams in the country to win a national championship. Is he a good quarterback? Yes. Is he a great quarterback? I don't know. And he's got to be great if they want to win a title. Donovan Edwards looks great in place of Blake Corum. 25 carries for 185 yards and a touchdown. Looks fantastic. Don't look to have a lot of problems there for that particular spot. Corum's obviously a loss. And if Edwards needs to stand out for a few minutes, take a breather, or is banged up, that's going to be a problem for the third stringer. They don't have depth behind that, but they seem to have another great running back that they can lean on there. On the defensive end, they were able to roll up 4 sacks, got a handful of QB tackles, several tackles for losses. They did a lot of damage to Purdue, which again is leaned on O'Connell the entire season, and they were just able to really put the game away in the second half. 29-9 was the second half score there, and they were just able to ultimately kind of salt Purdue away, but they did give up. Purdue had more yards. Purdue had 456 yards to 386. They did better on third down, so Michigan certainly has a few things that they can look at. Now the SEC championship game, Georgia over LSU 50-30. Jaden Daniels goes down with the score, I think 21-10. So it looked like it was going to be pretty well in hand prior to his injury. However, he may be out for the bowl game. We don't really know at this particular point, of course. Garrett Newsomer was the backup, completed just over 50% of his passes for almost 300 yards, a couple touchdowns, and a pick. But still, just absolutely nothing for the Georgia Bulldogs. Stetson Bennett was 23 for 29, 274 yards and 4 touchdowns. That's, I think, why he's back in the Heisman conversation. I'm sure he was still going to receive some votes, maybe enough to cut into the finals, make the finals cut there, but just doesn't quite have the statistics that some of these other quarterbacks have. Just had a really great game here and just rolled LSU, which really depended on Jaden Daniels and his flexibility in the pocket to win games, and the backup just wasn't going to get it done. Josh Williams, 6 carries for 55 yards, and the game just got away from LSU. There was a crazy ball that was thrown that was bounced off LSU player as he fell on the ground and popped up in the air, bounced off his helmet, and right into the hands of a Georgia player. Just a weird, sporadic play, and sometimes that's how the cookie crumbles. All things were going Georgia's way as they led 35-10 at the half, and just continued to coast the rest of the way in the blowout win. This was Georgia's first SEC title since 2017. Remember, they did not win it last season, losing to Alabama pretty handily. Alabama lost its first big receiver in that game, then its second one in the national championship game. Playing against Georgia, kind of lost all its weapons late and had the lead in the national championship game to Georgia before losing gas and talent later in that game. Just worth noting there. But Georgia's first SEC championship in a handful of years. The ACC championship game saw Clemson hammer North Carolina 39-10, and I think Mac Brown's got to be on the hot seat despite a 9-4 season for the Tar Heels there. They've had top recruiting classes. They continue to not always look like they know what they're doing on the field. If that's coordinator problems, if that's other things, then he's still the head of that, obviously. I didn't know what some of the play calls were in this particular game as I watched closer, obviously. And Drake May's talent is just being wasted here, much like Sam Howell's talent was being wasted. And just a really terrible game. Drake May was 26 for 42 for 268, had 2 picks in this game. A really, really bad formation set up at one point in the red zone, and the team just looked lost in what they were trying to execute, and he threw a bad ball, and it was a pick 6 the other way. But they were driving in order to cut a 14, or at least a 2, it might have been a weird score. They were driving to cut the game on a touchdown to a 1-possession game. And instead it was a pick 6 that turned into a 3-score deficit that just rolled out of control. He did have 11 carries for 24 yards and a touchdown as well, as he continued to move with his feet. If he went to a program that could actually utilize him, like Clemson, then it would be just amazing. He'd win the Heisman. It's not even a conversation. What he can do is simply amazing. Josh Downs, the top receiver by a mile there. He had 11 catches. No one else had more than 5. for 100 yards there. Just a great job. And that's the team. That's the offense. The defense did nothing. Clay Klubnik came in at quarterback, 20 for 24 passing, 279 yards and a touchdown, as he's going to take over the starting quarterback position. He also had 7 carries for 30 yards and a touchdown, according to the box. Obviously, sack yardage and stuff comes out of that, but ballpark. And just a great performance, and not much was really required from him. I guess I shouldn't say great. He was good for what was offered. And the defense showed up a little bit. 8 quarterback hurries, 4 sacks for defense that's been hurt, and really unimpressive for how many first round, NFL pick highlights we hear about this group. It's been really unimpressive, really poor coaching on both sides, all things considered, which is pretty bad considering these are the 2 ACC participant championship game teams. So just questions for both teams moving forward. And Mac Brown after the game said he did not prepare for Cade Klubnik to play quarterback for Clemson. Did not play, despite the fact that Clemson has openly been wondering if it was going to change quarterbacks throughout the week, and then did. And North Carolina didn't know what the hell it was doing. If that doesn't tell you anything, then I don't know. I don't know what the hell North Carolina's doing. They're winning this many games by accident and getting top recruits, so I don't know what the hell is going on there. In the non-Power 5 games, we didn't have a whole lot of excitement. UTSA won Conference USA for back-to-back seasons. They beat North Texas 48-27. Frank Harris had another great game. He was 32 for 37 passing, 341 yards and 4 touchdowns, another 49 yards and a touchdown on the ground. Franklin, his top receiver there, 10 grabs for 144 yards and 3 touchdowns. His other top guy, Cephalus, had 11 catches for 84 yards, and his other guy had 6 grabs for 84 yards and a touchdown. The great trio of receivers he's worked with there. His running back, Canaveral Barnes, had 28 carries for 175 yards and a touchdown as well, as the Mean Green team was just not able to keep up with 571 yards of offense from the Roadrunners, and they pulled away in the Conference USA game. Toledo beat Ohio 17-7 in the MAC. That was not a particularly interesting game, with the best player, the quarterback for Ohio, out in that particular matchup. Just not great. 17-7 was the final, though. Toledo backed into the MAC championship game. Ohio the best team, but just no quarterback. Not enough skill to keep up with it. Toledo manages to pull out a win there. Just not great coaching either. Not sure on some of their decisions. The MAC was really gross this year. The American Athletic Conference Championship game, a Tulane and Central Florida rematch, and Tulane is able to get revenge 45-28. The fourth quarter was amazing. 35 points scored in the fourth quarter. It was back and forth. The score was only 24-14 going in to the fourth quarter, but the defense for the Knights was just put on roller skates, and Tulane, after the Knights cut it close a couple times, just put on the gas and was able to really put them away. The offense for this team has really turned on as of late. Pratt had almost 400 yards throwing and 4 touchdowns. Spears, the running back, had 199 and a touchdown. Pratt had another 48 yards and a touchdown on the ground. So just a explosive offense all of a sudden. 6 sacks, 4 quarterback hurries, a handful of passes defended, 9 tackles for loss by the defense. The Green Wave had a 70-plus yard completion at one point in the fourth quarter, and were just able to compile the yards and put away the Knights in the fourth and just run away with it. Troy and Coastal Carolina for the Sun Belt. Grayson Michal was actually back for this game for Coastal Carolina, and they had no shot against Troy. Troy just bashed their heads in early. They were up, was it 31-7 at the half? Just bludgeoned them early. Grayson Michal didn't quite look fully healthy yet. 29 for 41 for 319, 3 touchdowns and a pick. Might tell you otherwise. He had a touchdown on the ground as well. But Troy built around a great defense, conservative offense. Gunnar Watson had 12 for 17 for 318 yards and 3 touchdowns. Just hit big plays down the field. over 18 yards per completion, and they forced a couple turnovers from the Chanticleers, and it's been Grayson Michal or bust for them all season, and Troy was just able to grab the win here despite having a couple yards less than the Chanticleers. But the defense, the big plays, made all of the difference when it mattered. Mountain West turned pretty yucky as well this season. Boise State has really compiled wins over not very good teams, while Fresno State, when healthy, has absolutely torched teams, and they managed to win the game 28-16 in what was effectively a rematch, although they did not have Jake Haener in the original matchup. Haener here only 17 for 27 for 184 and a touchdown, and not a whole lot of offense in this game at all for either team. Boise State had several more yards and a couple turnovers. They just are not as good a football team this year. Young Talon Green had a couple of picks and was only 17 for 38 passing, and that was just not enough to get it done against Fresno State. Even though they were able to generate some pressure, the Broncos were, it just wasn't enough. And Fresno State Bulldogs managed to avoid what could have been a rough season without their star quarterback and are able to capture the Mountain West title. And finally, what do we have here? Well, I guess that's it for the non-Power 5. We had a couple of sort of makeup games. Buffalo actually managed to beat Akron 23-20, nearly lost the game. Buffalo had lost 3 straight coming in. They were sitting at 5-6, needed a win to make a bowl game. Akron, 2-9, had won their last game, so they were actually coming in riding better than Buffalo with only 2 wins on the season. Weird string of events gave Buffalo a chance to win it late. Akron could have sealed this, and the Bulls are making a bowl game. And New Mexico State had to reschedule a previously postponed game against San Jose State. They were able to get scheduled Valparaiso, and paid them for basically a win, beat them 65-3. So New Mexico State, the Aggies, will be going to a bowl game as well. Pay for a bowl. There you go. So I want to touch briefly on some of the coaching changes, at least mention them so that you're aware, because for the most part, I don't necessarily I'm not as vested in some of these until actually the season next year. We're not going to see these guys coaching bowl games. We are going to be aware that these teams do not have their coaches in position for the sake of watching bowl games. We're going to know there's some turmoil. We're going to know that there's some different team building going on with new coaches in position. But for the most part, we're just kind of speculating on how these guys are going to improve their particular teams as they're moving in. So one of the big ones was Luke Fickell moving on from Cincinnati, heading to Wisconsin. He turned down a number of different jobs throughout the years and is heading to Wisconsin there. So Cincinnati will be a Big 12 job next year. They're officially moving, and that's the next set of dominoes to kind of go along with Texas and Oklahoma to the SEC, and UCLA and USC to the Big 10 over the next couple of years. We're 2 years from the playoff expansion, so a number of other major dominoes. We're about 2 years from things really getting crazy. But moving from Cincinnati to Wisconsin, I think it's going to be great for Wisconsin, first of all. They have a really good coach there, a little bit of a change from what they've had years past, I think, in scheming and recruiting, obviously using the transfer portal. It'll just be, Wisconsin's not viewed, obviously, as a major job, but just seen as a job that's a place where you can go and win 10 games, a place where you're going to love the community, a place that's supported, and a place that's going to be very welcoming for a coach of his stature to come in and win in the Big Ten. It is very interesting that he was reported to have links to Notre Dame, but turned that down. Of course, there's lots of academic stipulations with Notre Dame, and lots of teams are having issues getting kids in and out of the transfer portal. Notre Dame seems to be one of those schools, so although it seems like, Notre Dame might actually have a better track, especially to a 12-team playoff than Wisconsin, who might be buried behind Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, possibly USC, maybe UCLA. But it's possible that Wisconsin, just due to being able to have better accessibility to players, might be the better position there than Notre Dame. And it's going to be a team that's better situated in its conference than probably Cincinnati, with the Big 12 and the strength of that conference being a little bit up in the air. So it'll be good to see what he can do to kind of bring Wisconsin up into another challenger in the Big Ten for now going forward. USF hired Alex Golesh, the Tennessee offensive coordinator. That could be interesting, seeing a little bit more open offense there in South Florida, although not necessarily a big splashy name. Trent Dilfer is going to UAB. That is very interesting because he may be able to get some good recruits in there. And UAB is known for being even a team that dumped its football program altogether not that long ago. It was competitive prior to that. It was competitive after that. They're 6-6 this year, and we're still favored in a number of games against teams with better records. And it's just always a very good program for whatever reason. I think there's a lot of faith and support in that team there, in that program there. I think Trent Dilfer could really make some waves there at a much lower level there. With kind of Conference USA and the MAC being the bottom two conferences arguably in Division I right now, I think he could really build like a 10-win regular season squad and a dangerous team there in UAB to kind of start out with if he's going to continue to move up the college football ranks. That's a team that could really pop up out of nowhere with what he's able to contribute in the Elite 11 quarterbacks, checking out the top quarterbacks in the country and being on national TV and having his hand in football all the time, knowing what's going on, keeping up with the game. I think that is just a really good hire. Unexpected, but a really good hire. David Shaw does step out from Stanford. I don't think we have a head coach in there yet. I believe that's a program that only takes grad school transfers. It does not take non-undergrad transfers. Very weird situation there with the transfer portal being very important to what schools do now. Already difficult to get kids in there. Then they got to fight. He's got to fight with the transfer portal and getting people in. Football's already not a priority. Just a lot of things working against that football program. And he stepped down. He's out. He chose to leave. And I don't know what the hell Stanford does now. They could bring in, as far as coaching, bring in a coach. They're going to, I think, try and make it easier to get kids out of the transfer portal. But I don't see how Stanford dramatically improves as a program that much moving forward in the immediate future. Nebraska brought in Matt Rule. Of course, he's got his hands free after being dropped from the Carolina Panthers. He's rebuilt, obviously, at Temple, at Baylor, and quick. Within 2 years, he's got bottom feeder teams into bowl games and like 10-win seasons. We're talking really good teams. This is fantastic. He's already brought in the offensive coordinator from South Carolina, the running backs coach from UConn. He's going to be able to really do a lot with Nebraska, which still has a lot of support there and can still bring in some big players. And I just think that's a really good hire there, as we might get to see a bit of an arms race there in the Big Ten West with him now at Nebraska and Luke Fickell in at Wisconsin. Hugh Freeze left Liberty. He's going into Auburn. Of course, he's had a lot of controversy from his misdealings over the seasons, over the years, but strictly speaking, football, he's had success. He's had great success, and he's moving into a new SEC program. Previously at Ole Miss. No reason not to think that he can't have that into at least a good functioning program pretty soon, quite frankly. He's still relatively young. I think he's 50 certainly, but early 50s. So he's been around the block several times over in the past decade plus here. Coastal Carolina's coach, Jamie Chadwell, he is going to take that Liberty job. Liberty seems to do quite well as far as his football program. Coastal Carolina has really done well under Jamie. Grayson Michal has been part of that at quarterback, but he's done a great job coaching. So Liberty's actually, I think, is a step up from that. So we'll see if he can continue to do well with Liberty, who's done well with a number of different coaches over the years. So I think that's a good spot and a good hire there. Tim Beck, the offensive coordinator from NC State, will take over the Coastal Carolina job. The offense wasn't good this year. We'll see how that hire does for them. Scott Satterfield then is moving from Louisville to Cincinnati to take that job. It's been rumored. He said openly that he's looking at other positions, I believe, in years previous, and I believe he's been a little bit on the hot seat there and not in good standing with the university. So I think that's just nearly hopping over the pond there, state lines, to take a different position there. Not necessarily an upgrade. Interesting choice for Cincinnati as they're now a Big 12 program. I'm not sure that it's a step up, but it's something different, I suppose. I don't have really any feelings either way in that particular hire. Arizona State hired Oregon's offensive coordinator Kenny Dillingham for head coach there. So maybe we'll see a little bit more open offense. The quarterback, the kid they have there at Arizona State, should he stay the quarterback to finish the season, was not too bad there. Trenton Bourget, I believe it's pronounced, 1,490 yards, 71% completion percentage, 11 touchdowns, 6 picks. Only started a handful of games towards the back end of the season, I believe, but he did a good job there. But a lot of guys in the transfer portal, so we'll see what happens there. Speaking of big coaching changes and transfer portals, of course, the big one is Deion Sanders going to Colorado. He's constantly being filmed for his reality TV show, so all the players that are there have to sign waivers that's okay. It's just wild. It's just wild. He'll be must-watch TV. The recordings are of his, oh boy, I don't even know where to go with this. So there's recordings of him going and talking to the kids already there at the school, of course, the players, and he did not get a warm reception. I think they were a little aghast at what he was saying. Enter the transfer portal if you don't want to compete. I'm here to clean shop. I'm getting rid of people. I'm throwing you all out. Essentially, they were 1-11 last year, which was terrible, but it's just, I think that's tough. It's a tough way to do it. And he said he's bringing his own guys with him, and he could really fall flat on his face, and he could really lose a lot of his depth. And that's just a tough way to kind of bully kids out, I think. And of course, the thought process is he's just going to pull everyone out of the portal that he wants, rebuild this team, screw it, just dump everyone on the entire Colorado roster. They all suck. But that's a real tough way to look at things, and it seems to be more of an NFL mentality than anything else. But with that being said, supposedly there's kind of moving into the transfer portal talk as well. Over 1,000 kids entered on the first day as I'm recording the first section of this, and supposedly over 200 kids have reached out to the Colorado program about transferring in. The McCowan kid, I don't know if it's Luke McCowan's son. There are a couple McCowans in the NFL. The son of one of the McCowans anyways, said he's transferring out. There'll be other Colorado players as well. And then the Jacksonville players are just supposed to come with Deion, including his son, into the quarterback position there. And they're just supposed to transfer the success over and infuse the team with transfers and have success. And that's just a tough sell, I think. He's bringing some of his position skill guys with his coaching staff with him. I just think that's a tough way to be. To kind of just immediately go in to a team, even if they're losing, and just immediately wipe everyone out. I think that hurts your depth into year one. I think you're just rebuilding a team on the fly. I mean, Lincoln Riley has done well, almost made the playoffs, but that's what you're going to be doing, except with a team that was 1-11 last year and doesn't have a great recruiting base. And it's just going to be difficult, I think. And if he's getting his ass kicked early, I just really think that he's going to lose some respect of those around him and his players, and that some of that mentality isn't going to work. It's great if he's at the lower levels and he's winning and his kid's a good quarterback at that particular level, but if he gets his ass kicked early and often, I think it's going to be a problem pretty much off the bat. He's either going to be successful or he's just going to be out pretty early, and I just don't know how that's going to go. Now, the non-conference season opens up against Nebraska and TCU next year, so it's going to be a tough year one regardless. They could immediately win 4 or 5 games. The bottom half of the Pac-12 is obviously very bad, but I just don't know long-term what he's going to do. And I think it's very difficult to come in and just tell kids just to get your ass in the transfer portal, which is essentially basically what he told them. Different adjective, I think. But just a very short-sighted way to kind of communicate with people, I think. He can come in and say, I'm challenging you. It's going to be a tough time. A bunch of guys are probably going to follow me here. We're going to bring in a number of transfers. We're going to make it a tough time. But just to immediately come in and clean house, especially if you end up thin at a number of positions for guys that you could have used, I don't know about that particularly tough messaging. It's one thing to say you're going to be challenged. This team was garbage last year. It's another thing to just say, get the fuck out. So I don't know about his messaging and all that, and it certainly seems to be more of a reality show for him than a coaching position right now. So, of course, a lot of it's put on his coordinators. Can he hire good people around him? That's part of it, and part of him being good and then bringing in top talent. And, of course, he's supposed to be the bright, shining star, even though none of these kids have ever seen him play football. Supposedly, his parents will get their kids to go play for him, and he'll still bring in top recruits. So we'll see. We'll see if that's true. Boosters are all excited. That's cool. That's great. NIL money is flooding in, but that means this guy's got to win. And he's got to win like within a couple years, like big, or people are going to be pissed and kids are going to be pissed. So it's not going to go so hot. But that's going to be the Coach Prime experience for now. Now, kids in the transfer portal of note. DJ Ungale. Now that Cade Klubenik has been officially named starter for the bowl game. He former 5-star, of course. He's entering the transfer portal. 2 years of eligibility left, I believe, but he is officially in the transfer portal. Could, of course, return to Clemson. Any of these guys could return back to their original school, but he is in the transfer portal. Will he land at a high program? I don't know. I feel like he's kind of been damaged a bit by his performance for Clemson and how they've performed recently. He'd be an interesting get for another kind of middling level school. He's a great dual threat. Austin Reed, who was second in passing yards this year for Western Kentucky, who formerly transferred in from, West Florida, where he won a Division II championship, over 4,200 yards, 36 touchdowns this season. He's in the transfer portal as well. He'll be at his third school in 3 years. Presumably, he could be a sneaky good quarterback for whoever gets a hold of him. Devin Leary from North Carolina State was banged up this year, projected to possibly have a shot at winning the ACC championship and possibly make some noise in the NFL draft. Injured, did not play well prior to that, and he's all of a sudden in the transfer portal. That could be a very, very big grab for whoever gets him after not doing much this year. Kendon Slavic, formerly of USC, of Pitt this year, had a horrible season. He is now looking for another school, his third in 3 years after having a great couple years at USC, despite the fact that was really a struggling program. He's another talented guy that could certainly help another team. Anthony Richardson from Florida is straight up going to the NFL draft. He's not going to play in the bowl game. I think that is a horrible mistake. He played some horrible games this year. 17 touchdowns throwing, 9 rushing, 6-6 year. He had an opportunity to guide them to more wins. That's a baffling move. I wonder if he'll be back, but that's just worth noting here. Deshaun McCullum, the number 1 player in the 22 recruiting class for Indiana, I believe the number 1 overall, a phenomenal linebacker, also in the transfer portal. Wouldn't be surprised if he stays in the Big Ten. Boston College, Philip Yurkovich. Yurkovic, there we go. One of these days I'll get his name right. Possibly looking for the NFL draft this year. Was hurt at the end of last, had all kinds of problems. Boston College was horrible this year, had about 20 offensive linemen injured. He is transferring out of Boston College, and he will be going to Pitt to presumably have a shot at being their new starting quarterback. So there's a quick change right there. Of course, we know Michigan, Cade McNamara transferring out. He's already got a landing spot in Iowa. I think that's a big move. I think he will provide a lot for that team, and as much as Iowa gets knocked on, rightfully so, I think he's going to add some new dimensions and a real quarterback to that team, which has not had one in a couple of years now. And one that can do a couple of things. Move the pocket, run around, throw the ball. I think that provides a lot to Iowa. Spencer Sanders, who's been with Oklahoma State for a very long time, and as I've ragged on a few times for not being productive in big games, he's still got eligibility, apparently, hard to keep track. He's in the transfer portal as well. Not going pro, still using eligibility, and he'll be going elsewhere as well. So another big name there. Jackson Smith-Njigba, not transferring. Another little one in the mix here. He's not going to play in the playoffs at all. He's been banged up. He's going to the NFL. He only played 3 games this year. Just worth noting that. He will not be healthy enough to play in the playoffs. He's skipping them. Will be going into the NFL draft. Just worth noting there. Justin Flo, number 1 rated inside linebacker for the class of 2020, will enter the transfer portal, formerly of Oregon. He's from California. Does he end up transferring to a school that could really use some defensive help right now and couldn't tackle anybody in the Pac-12 Conference Championship game. Maybe. Keep that on the radar. California loses Oldejo, their linebacker as well. He's transferring to UCLA to assist on their defense. So Cal does get some talent there. Not able to keep it, though. Arizona, Dorian Singer was a fantastic receiver for them this year. 3-star recruit coming out of high school. He'll be entering the transfer portal, over 1,100 yards this year and 66 catches for that particular young man. Devin Harris, the corner, joins the exodus from Texas A&M. He will enter the transfer portal. And I'm missing another big one here. Brennan Armstrong, another ACC quarterback. He's a grad transfer at this particular point. Over 4,400 yards in his career, 31 touchdowns. A tough season this year, like a dumpster fire season, much like the Boston College quarterback. Supposed to be a great year for ACC quarterbacks, and it just wasn't. But he'll be in the transfer portal as well with 1 year left. So a lot of potentially like really good quarterbacks in the transfer portal right now. All this from 24/7 Sports, although a number of sites are keeping an eye on every single move. So those are the highlights, a few of the highlights right now. So I love bowl game season because there are games on all times of the day and night, and there's always something going on while you're doing your festivities, while you're working throughout the day to have something on the background, all that kind of stuff. I love it. But there are a few things about bowl games. They're pretty much random grab bags. All of them are away games. They're all 3 to 5 weeks after the season is over. The practice schedule's all jumbled up. The actual school schedules in real life and holiday breaks and tests and the mental aspect the kids have to deal with is all over the place. All the bowls have different celebrations and parties and festivities for everyone. They can sometimes bleed over to the next day, like kids being hungover. That can cause different strain. They're played at all different times of the day and all different days of the week, which are unfamiliar. You have kids coming back from injuries. You have kids getting injured during practice. You have kids sitting out because they're going pro, kids going into the transfer portal. You have seasonal illnesses, just getting a cold. You have coaching changes, personnel coaches, all kinds of stuff. So sometimes they more closely resemble a preseason exhibition game than a postseason game with meaning, unless, of course, you're in the playoffs. So noting that, I have a walkthrough watch guide for you, the order that all the games are on. I've noted how many wins against winning teams each team has, because everyone wants to know, well, who did this team actually beat? Are they any good? Well, I started by telling how many teams everyone has against other bowl teams, and we only have one 5-7 team in the mix this year in Rice, and a lot of 6-6 teams, of course, but I decided just to keep track of how many 7-5 or better teams, how many teams with winning records that will also finish with winning records, whether or not they win their bowl game, does each team have. And then I power ranked all of the bowl games as well on 4 tiers: your popcorn games, your top watches, your check-in games that are still worth keeping an eye on, games to keep on the background that aren't as exciting, and your watch hoop games, or not really worth watching at all. Of course, if a crappy one comes on at noon on a Tuesday, you're probably going to watch it. So popcorn, check-in, background, watch hoops, 4 power rankings, and just a few other fun things here with the bowl games. So Friday, December 16th is the very first one. It's actually at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time, of course, between a couple of 6-6 teams on ESPN. Miami of Ohio out of the MAC, and UAB out of Conference USA, the Bahamas Bowl. The Miami is 0-3 against teams with winning records. Their best win is either 5-7 Ball State, who they beat 18-17 to end the season, or Northwestern 17-14, if you want to count them as a Power 5 win. Obviously, they only won their opener against Nebraska, so I would almost go 5-7 Ball State, which is just gross. Loss-wise, looking at their losses, they lost at Kentucky 37-13, and they lost to Cincinnati 38-17. Both of those were one-possession games at the half, so they hung in there and were completely slaughtered, I guess, by some decent teams there. UAB always has decent metrics. 2-4 against winning teams. The best one is 41-21 against North Texas, who played in the Conference USA Championship, but actually just fired their coach. They was looking for a replacement. They finished the season 7-6. They had 5 losses by 1 possession, including Liberty, UTSA, and a road game at Western Kentucky. So not horrible there. They did have one of the best running backs in the country in McBride there, who put up some good numbers. Miami of Ohio, I didn't watch a ton of MAC this year. UAB seemed to have a solid squad at times. It seems like they should be the clear favorite in this particular game. I rank this as something to not really be watching, to watch hoops. It'd be nice if UAB was kind of matched up against a better team. They're double-digit favorites, one of the highest lines right now, because this is just supposed to be a mismatch, but that is the opening game right now. We have one other one on December 16th as well at 3 o'clock, so lucky you can get a doubleheader here on a Friday. Number 25, UTSA, and number 24, Troy, both 11-2 in the Cure Bowl. This is one of my top 5 watches. I have it ranked number 4 right now on my power rankings for watching teams right now. Troy is 4-1 against winning teams. They won the Sun Belt Conference Championship. The best wins, Coastal Carolina and at South Alabama, 2 other good teams in the Sun Belt there. UTSA is 4-2 against winning teams. Conference USA Conference champions for back-to-back years, undefeated in conference play this year. They beat North Texas twice and won at Middle Tennessee. I guess those are the best wins. Their only losses were a triple overtime loss to Houston, and they lost by a few scores at Texas. This is going to be a good team, a good game. UTSA is going to want to put up a lot of points. Troy wins by defense. They can be proficient on offense. As I mentioned earlier, they hit a couple big plays in the conference championship game in order to pull away from that, but these are contrasting styles of football. A great quarterback and skill position players for UTSA, and just a really good all-around team in Troy. But this is going to be a top 5 game between 2 conference championships at the non-Power 5 level. Obviously, 2 top 25 teams. It's going to fall at 3 o'clock on a Friday, December 16th. This is going to be a really good ball game, and this might be the last time you see Frank Harris, a quarterback for the Roadrunners. Rolling into Saturday, December 17th, which is primarily going to be college basketball real estate now. Teams are already getting into conference play. We're a third of the way into the season. Things are crazy, but we've got one last section of college football games here. Another 11 o'clock start. Louisville is 7-5. They're hosting Cincinnati, who's 9-3, for the Fenway Bowl on ESPN. Louisville's coach, Suttonfield, is going to Cincinnati, taking that job. How bizarre is that? I have no idea what kind of shape that takes in this particular game. I assume he's going to take some transfers with him from Louisville to Cincinnati. Some of the Cincinnati players are going to be playing for him in a year. So is he essentially auditioning kids? It's just a super weird dynamic to be leaving the one team you're playing with. At least I think he's going to be coaching this team. Maybe not. Maybe he's immediately going to leave and intern's going to take over. I'm not sure. Just a weird dynamic. He was just hired today as I'm finishing up this podcast, but it's entirely possible he finishes his coaching tenure with his Louisville team against the Cincinnati team he's about to go to. Since he's 2-2 against winning teams this year, that's not including the road loss to Arkansas in the opener by 7. The other losses were at UCF by 4 and at Tulane by 3, so lots of close games there. The best win, I guess, was against SMU on the road by 2 or East Carolina by 2. Just a lot of close games there and losing to the better opponents. The offense has really been a problem, and you have to wonder what it's going to be like moving to the Big 12 for next season if they're kind of going to get splattered there. Although the defense has a lot of good pieces. Lots of quarterbacks in the transfer portal. I don't know if Malik Cunningham has another year of eligibility for Louisville or if he would move over to Cincinnati. It's just interesting to see what they're going to be doing there. Bryant has not looked like someone who's going to succeed at a Power 5 level in that position there. As for Louisville, 5-4 against winning teams. They've played just as many teams with winning records by the end of the regular season as anybody in the country. And they didn't come on till late. Good defense. Will Malik Cunningham be playing? Don't know. He's been in and out of the lineup. They've played a couple different quarterbacks there. I have this as a very high watchable game. Popcorn section, this is a top 16 on my list right now. At 2:15 on ESPN will be the New Mexico Bowl. Couple 7-5 teams, SMU and BYU. SMU, of course, out of the American Conference, much like Cincinnati. BYU independent. SMU's 2-5 against winning teams this season. The best win was that massive shootout with Houston, 77-63. They came out on the right side of that. The top 5 teams they played, they all lost to. At Maryland, TCU, Cincinnati. Those are all by a possession, though. But they were blown out road games to Tulane and UCF. Just a team where the defense is just a complete disaster there. They do have a good offense, good quarterback play. BYU, on the other hand, 2-4 against winning teams. Best win, Baylor, who finished 6-6, at Boise State, who finished, 9-4, but just a team that did not struggled all year. Had more returning players than anyone in the country, struggled on both sides of the football. All the losses were to winning teams. Oregon, Notre Dame, they also lost to 6-6 Arkansas. They gave up 37.8 points per game in the losses, and they've given up at least 20 points in every single game this season. SMU has given up at least 23 points per game in the last 10 games. The first 2, they kept it down a little bit, and it's since exploded. So they'll be points just all over this game. At 3:30, the Jimmy Kimmel LA Bowl. How about that? And he gets a decent one. Fresno State is 9-4. They're hosting Washington State, who's 7-5. This game is on ABC. Washington State is 0-5 against winning teams. They lost to all the good teams. The only ugly blowout was Washington at the end of the year. They also won at 6-6 Wisconsin. So kind of riding the wave there. They kind of remind me of Arizona State last year, where I believe went 8-5 and had one win over a team with a winning record. So just coasting there in the Pac-12, beating the really bad teams and just not having a shot against the good ones. But that's the state there. Fresno, 4-3 against winning teams. They lost by 3 to Oregon State with Jake Heiner sidelined. They were down a couple scores to USC when he went down. And those 2 games turned into a 4-game losing streak. But other than that, they've won the last 8 games, including a healthy rematch against Boise State to win the Mountain West Championship. So the best win for them was Boise State in that rematch. Worst loss was arguably at UConn. But UConn's making a bowl game. And again, no Jake in that game. That was a 19-14 loss, I believe, in the first game that he was out fully, and they had the backup in there who was really bad. Fife, I believe it was. And just a rough time. This will be a good game. 2 good quarterbacks, Cameron for Washington State, Jake there, Heiner for Fresno State, and 2 teams that really revolve around what their quarterbacks can do in throwing the football. That's 3:30 on AMC. At 5:45, we have a real stinker. Rice at 5-7 is playing Southern Miss at 6-6 in the Lending Tree Bowl. Rice, 5-7, right? Well, they're 0-5 against winning teams. It's great they made a bowl, but they're 7th in Conference USA. Losing record. Lost 3 straight to finish the season. They beat 6-6 UAB, so I guess that's 1 decent win on the season. Just not great there. Southern Miss upset Tulane on the road, 27-34 earlier in the year. Without that, they'd also be 5-7. They're 1-4 against winning teams. 3rd in the Sun Belt West, 7th overall best record. I actually have this as my lowest power ranked game, so this is a skipper as far as I'm concerned. At 7:30, number 14, Oregon State, not our first ranked team, besides Troy and UTSA. Number 14, Oregon State, our first ranked Power 5 team, is playing a 6-6 Florida team in the Las Vegas Bowl. Now, Florida is 2-5 against winning teams. Big win was the opener against Utah, and South Carolina was the other one, so it's kind of a gap there. They beat South Carolina towards the back end of the year. They survived Utah to start the season. Their worst loss was Vanderbilt. Otherwise, they lost to teams that at least made bowl games. Oregon State is 4-3 against winning teams. They beat Oregon, and they lost to the rest of the Pac-12, basically. USC, Utah, at Washington. So they nabbed one of the good teams. They're basically at 9-3, the middle of the Pac-12. Now, the problem here is that Anthony Richardson just declared for the NFL draft. I don't know what's going to go on with Florida. If guys are going to sit out, this is one of those games where that could happen. They've had a great running back there, a couple running backs for Florida that they could lean on. I'm just not sure what's going to happen here. I mean, Oregon State already came in 3 wins better. Yeah, with a good defense. Quarterback plays a little questionable. They have a good running back there. Just not sure what's going to happen in this game. And it could be one of those fluke ones where Florida literally has a dozen guys sit out and they still win the ball game. So this is just one of those spots where it's going to get kind of weird, I think. And had to pull it down a little bit due to Anthony Richardson sitting out. But that's the Las Vegas Bowl. The Frisco Bowl is at 9:15 on this, 5-game slate. North Texas is 7-6, and they're playing Boise State at 9-4. 2 runners up in the Conference USA and Mountain West in their respective conference championship games. North Texas is 1-3 against winning teams. They did win at Western Kentucky earlier in the year, and they did lose at UNLV in a blowout, and the rest of the losses were to bowl teams. They just fired their coach, so I have no idea what's going on there. They do have a balanced offense, whereas Boise State with Taylon Green there at quarterback, the new freshman, and a good defense. This would be an interesting matchup, but since we have some turmoil there at North Texas, I'm not sure what this game is going to be. Still worth checking in on, but not sure what's going to happen here. I do believe, Boise State's best win is probably over Fresno State earlier in the year. They really ate on some really bad Mountain West teams. It's not been a great record here for Boise State, despite the fact they're 9-4 and could be 10-4. That just looking pretty likely right now. But that wraps up Saturday the 17th. Monday the 19th at 2:30 in the afternoon. It's our only game on the slate. UConn is 6-6. They finally made a bowl game. It's been a long drought for them. Marshall is 8-4. This is the Myrtle Beach Bowl. Marshall's 2-2 against winning teams. Of course, the big one at Notre Dame earlier in the season. They have 2 losses to non-bowl teams. A couple losses to bowl teams. It's just a mix there, hodgepodge for Marshall, despite the fact they have 8 wins. And UConn, not so great. 2-3 against winning teams. The best win is probably Liberty. They beat Fresno with no quarterback, of course. This just isn't a very good team. This is not a good football team. 5 losses by 10-plus points. I only put that in there because there's 1 or 2 that were closer, and they were crushed in the others. And this is just not a very good ball club. Marshall, I believe, is a heavy favorite in this one. 9 points at the moment. One of the larger lines in the bowl games. So that's lower on my list. Certainly. Tuesday, December 20th, we have a couple of games. At 3:30, we have Eastern Michigan, who's 8-4. They will be playing San Jose State, who's 7-5, a MAC and a Mountain West team here in the famous Idaho Potato Bowl. You know the one. Eastern Michigan tied with Toledo for first place in the West Division of the MAC, but lost the head-to-head game, so did not make the championship game there. They are 0-1 against winning teams. Toledo was their only shot. Best win was at Arizona State, though. I think you have to tally that one, which essentially led to the firing of Herm Edwards there. The worst loss was against 3-9 Northern Illinois at home, 39-10. Horrid. They won 3 straight to finish the season. San Jose State's 1-2 against winning teams. Their best win is probably on the road at 7-5 Wyoming. I don't like that team either. I don't like San Jose State that much. Their losses, lost by position at Auburn, at Fresno State, at Utah State. They were blown out at San Diego State, so they kept a lot of these games close. But Fresno State wasn't healthy when they played them. Just a lot of false wins, really. The best way to say it, I think. So for 8-4 team and 7-5 team, just not a super impressive teams despite the records, but it might be a very interesting bowl game. The nightcap is at 7:30 in the Boca Raton Bowl. Oh boy, something like that. There's an advertiser to that, and I believe I left it off. But the 7:30 on that. Toledo's 8-5, winners of the MAC, of course, and they're playing Liberty, who's 8-4. So even winning the MAC doesn't really get you too far there. Chadwell from Coastal Carolina is heading to Liberty, so Hugh Freeze is out of Liberty. I don't think he's coaching the bowl game, so we got no coach here. Liberty's 1-1 against winning teams. Their best win's probably BYU, who was 7-5. They have 3 wins over 6-6 bowl teams. Worst loss, take your pick. UConn, Virginia Tech, least they're Power 5. New Mexico State, they lost 3 straight to finish the season. It was bad. It was just really bad. Toledo, of course, won the MAC. They backed into the conference championship game, 1-2 against winning teams. The biggest win was probably against that Eastern Michigan team that I just trashed. 2 bad losses to Western Michigan and Bowling Green. I actually didn't realize they made a bowl game when I made these notes, but I guess that's a 6-6 team though, at least. But they squeaked out a 17-7 win against Ohio in the MAC conference championship game, and Ohio didn't even have their great starting quarterback that really got them there. So I just this game again, 2 8-win teams. It's a little iffy on the watchability for this particular game. Wednesday, we have got, do we have 1 game, 2 game? Well, 9 o'clock. Oh, this is the late game. We have 1 late game, 9 o'clock, ESPN. It's so late at night. South Alabama, 10-2, and Western Kentucky was 8-5 for the New Orleans Bowl. This would be a really good game if Austin Reed didn't enter the transfer portal. Western Kentucky is 1-3 against winning teams. They did win 3 of their last 4 to make a bowl game. Austin Reed, though, again, in the transfer portal, they had 16 combined passes outside of him. Both were by freshman quarterbacks. And Austin Reed was also the second leading ball carrier on the team with 87 total carries for 8 rushing touchdowns. So they're losing a ton of offense with him. I have no idea what it's going to look like. Their best win was at Middle Tennessee, but I've now said that a couple times now, so maybe Middle Tennessee wasn't a very good team. The losses were all to good conference teams and road Power 5 schools, Indiana and Auburn, which weren't very good schools, so I'm not sure what to do with that. South Alabama lost to Troy in the head-to-head, but finished with the same record in the Sun Belt. They just didn't get a chance to go to the conference championship game. So they were 0-2 against winning teams. Best win, I guess, was at Georgia Southern, but their only losses were 10-6 to Troy, and then at UCLA, 32-31. So the 6 points against Troy was by far the lowest total of the year offensively. They've scored 30+ points 8 times. They have a really good defense. Again, lost by 1 point at UCLA, and they've just been really good. And I just can't see how this doesn't turn into a thumping unless one of these quarterbacks for Kentucky is the next great coming at that school. So not sure if this is going to be a blowout or not. On Friday, the 23rd, we have a 3 o'clock game, just 1 game in the afternoon, and it's kind of a bummer. It's Louisiana at 6-6. They're playing Houston, who is 7-5 on ESPN, the Independence Bowl. Now, Louisiana, I haven't kept many tabs on. This is one of the few teams I didn't see any games from this year. Again, Billy Donovan, once he left and went to Florida for his first season this year, there wasn't a whole lot going on at Louisiana. They were 2-3 against winning teams. Best win was at Marshall. Some of their losses, they lost to 4-8 Louisiana. At least the rest of the teams they lost to were bowl teams. Some were blowouts, though. It's just really a mixed bag. Just not great most of the season. Really not a good ball team. Houston was 2-3 against winning teams, but better squads than Louisiana. Best one was at UTSA in triple overtime in the opener. Obviously, kind of a coin flip game. They really weren't terrible, despite the fact that they're expected to maybe win or lose 1 game all year. But they did lose to Tulsa 37-30 in the last game of the year, a non-bowl team. That one was bad. So kind of backing into the bowl game here, and just not a great matchup, unfortunately, on Friday afternoon. But if you're on a break from work, or you're working remote, or you're decorating, or wrapping presents, or whatever, then you'll certainly have it on. Now, Christmas Eve, we have 1 game on that Saturday, the 24th. It's an 8 o'clocker, so might be invested in other activities if you are a Christmas celebrator. Middle Tennessee and San Diego State, both 7-5 teams, play in the Hawaii Bowl. Middle Tennessee is 0-3 against winning teams. The best win might be that blowout down in Miami. All of their losses, though, are by 15+ points. All of them. They got blown the hell out. San Diego State is 2-4 against winning teams, but they had 6 games with fewer than 20 points scored this year. 3 of them came away with wins. Their best win was probably against Toledo, the MAC winners. I don't think they didn't have any terrible losses here, but just a team that's really struggled with offense at all. where Middle Tennessee is kind of the opposite side, but when they get blasted real hard. But Middle Tennessee, San Diego State, Mountain West, Conference USA, that is your Christmas Eve matchup. After Christmas, we have a few more sleepers here before we start to get to the heavy hitters. On the 26th, Monday, 2:30, we have one game, New Mexico and Bowling Green, a couple 6-6 teams. It's New Mexico State. They're an independent team, and Bowling Green out of the MAC. New Mexico State is 1-1 against winning teams. The big win coming against Liberty. They're 5-1 in their last 6 games. They actually had to schedule a makeup game against Valparaiso from the FBS level to make up a lost San Jose State game from earlier in the year. So they had to basically pay for a bowl game win in order to reach bowl game eligibility and get that 6th win. Bowling Green is 2-3 against winning teams. Surprisingly, they're one of the MAC teams that's had the most opportunities to beat winning teams. There weren't a whole lot of them in that conference. Best win is at Toledo. Again, I've said Toledo several times now, so perhaps that wasn't such a good team. They had 5 losses by 20-plus points, and the 6th loss was a 7 overtime defeat at the hands of Eastern Kentucky. So, all kinds of ick in this game, but that is your Monday afternoon after Christmas. Tuesday, the 27th, we have a few more on the slate. At noon, Georgia Southern is 6-6, one of the best passing offenses in the country. They're playing Buffalo, who is 6-6, another team that had to schedule a makeup game in order to make a bowl game here. This is the Camellia Bowl. The Quick Lane Bowl was New Mexico and Bowling Green. This one here, though, Georgia Southern is 1-3 against winning teams. The best win was against George Madison, maybe the road win at Nebraska, if you want to count that one against a Power 5 opponent. Buffalo was 2-3 against winning teams. They beat Toledo and have a road win at Eastern Michigan. 3 of their losses were to non-bowl teams, including Holy Cross. And again, they had to reschedule a game against Akron in the last week of the season, just last week, to get to bowl eligibility. And they nearly lost that game against Akron, so they nearly didn't make a bowl game at all. Just another kind of gross game here. Georgia Southern and Buffalo. 3:15, Memphis is 6-6. They're playing Utah State, who is 6-6. This is on ESPN. First Responders Bowl. Memphis is 1-6 against winning teams. They beat North Texas, who finished 7-6, obviously made the Conference USA game. Their losses were to everyone decent. They were 0-4 in one-possession ball games. Utah State was 2-4 against winning teams. The best win, I guess, was Air Force. All of their losses, all 6 of them, were by 10-plus points. There were a few blowouts in there. And this is another game. Utah State's been very inconsistent all year after making the Mountain West Championship game last year. I believe they've gone through a couple of quarterbacks. Memphis has been leaning on Seth Harburger, I believe, is the quarterback there. And that passing offense, not very good on the defensive end. So there could be points in both of these afternoon games, but just not great bowl games altogether. 6:45 is Coastal Carolina at 9-3 and East Carolina at 7-5 in the Birmingham Bowl. Coastal Carolina might not have Grayson McCall, especially with his head coach gone, and that'll take a lot out of this matchup if that is the case. Coastal was 1-2 against winning teams. The best win was at Marshall, who of course ended up 8-4 on the year. They were blown out the last 2 games of the season against James Madison and Troy. Those are games that they did have. Well, Grayson McCall was back for one of those, and he just did not quite look right. They don't have a backup quarterback there. The defense hasn't been good. They're embarrassed by Old Dominion earlier in the year. On homecoming week, it was just bad. So without Grayson McCall, it's going to be rough going. East Carolina has a good quarterback there in Ullers. They're 2-4 against winning teams. The best one was UCF by 21. Smashed the Knights there. That is a good win. They came up just short against NC State, Cincinnati, and Navy in double overtime. They were hammered by Tulane and Houston, but this East Carolina team had the ability to win a few more games. They did hit their over-under of 6.5 wins. I know that because I bet it. I like the offense of the Pirates, and if Coastal has a quarterback, it'll be good too. If not, this is going to be quite a bad bowl game, I think, and East Carolina is going to be favored by double digits. The line is 9.5 right now. So it looks like Grayson McCall's not expected to finish out his career here at Coastal Carolina in a bowl game. A late night 10:15, the Guarantee Rate Bowl. Can't wait for that one. This is a couple better teams, though. Oklahoma State, who's 7-5, and Wisconsin, who's 6-6. It's not saying much. Wisconsin's 2-5 against winning teams. The best one is Purdue. They were crushed several times this year. They lost in double overtime to MSU. They lost to better teams other than that. The East, of course, and the West Division there in the Big Ten. Oklahoma State's 2-2 against winning teams. The best one was Texas. They lost 4 of their last 5. West Virginia was probably the worst one, and that was the last game of the season. They were not a bowl team. At this point, I believe both starting quarterbacks from the transfer portal. Spencer Sanders certainly is, and Graham Mertz is as well. Yes, Graham Mertz is as well for Wisconsin. So I don't know who's going to be throwing the ball for either of these teams. Oklahoma State, of course, a top 10 team at one point and completely fell apart down the way there. And they have a great running back. Still for Wisconsin, a great running crew. That's what I'd expect to still see there anyways, even as they're changing coaching staffs. Oklahoma State, I'm not sure who they have as a backup quarterback, but I was never super high on Spencer Sanders. Anyways, this might still be, I don't have this as a highly ranked bowl game, but this might not be a complete loss, even with all the turnover there at the main primary quarterback positions and a coaching change. This wasn't going to be a riveting bowl game if both quarterbacks changed, and with both of them out, it certainly hurts this game a bit, but it's still not a super high watch game. So, but that's the late night anyway. So it's just kind of buried on top of that. Just tough here. Don't know who's going to win. I would assume Wisconsin's got a bit of an edge, but who really knows? Just kind of buried late here on a Tuesday night with some mixed personnel. Wednesday, the 28th at 2:00. UCF, the Knights are 9-4, and they're playing Duke, who's 8-4. And this is going to be, of course, ESPN, the Military Bowl, one of several games on this date. A nice matchup between a Power 5 and a non-Power 5. And right now, this is, I think, a 1-point game, 1-point spread, Central Florida's way. The Knights are 3-3 against winning teams. They did win at Tulane. They beat Cincinnati. Then, of course, they lost against the Tulane in the rematch for the American Conference Championship game. They did lose to Navy as well. That was not a good loss. Duke is 1-2 against winning teams. They did beat Wake Forest in the last game of the year, which was their best win, probably. All their losses were by 7 points or fewer. So they kind of hung around against a really crummy ACC. Now, Duke, a little bit better on the offensive side of things, but really has not been a really dangerous team for a good chunk of the year. UCF has been juggling quarterbacks there, but prefers to run the ball in an option anyways. Has a good defense on that side, but they've played a lot of games close to end the season. Not sure what they're really going to bring to the field. They're certainly going to be susceptible. I think that's why we have such a close spread. If UCF closed out strong and at least was close in the American Conference Championship game, I think they'd be favored by closer to a touchdown in this game. But Duke kept everything close this year, even if we don't believe they're a real strong team, and Central Florida kind of faded down the stretch. So this will be a closer matchup as far as bowl games go, and both of these teams should be mostly intact as far as rosters and transfer portal and coaching changes and NBA and NFL players sitting out. These should be more of the 2 complete rosters out of all the bowl teams and bowl games being played. At 5:30, a couple 6-6 teams, Arkansas and Kansas in the Liberty Bowl. Kansas was 3-4 against winning teams. The best win was either Duke or at Houston, so it gets a little thin there. They had 2 3-game skids this season, including a 3-gamer to end the season where they were blown out of every single game. Jalen Daniels came back. Of course, he was part of that great success to start the season 5-0. But he doesn't play defense. The thought was that he would make an impact while he was out. It would make a big difference for the team's offense, and once he came back and make a difference as well. Bean, the backup quarterback, did a great job, and it's true that Jalen Daniels does make a difference, but man, the defense has been horrific, and once they got into the thick of conference play, the Jayhawks just could not stay competitive in a lot of games. They have a good running back there as well, and Arkansas's defense is not great either, so there will be some points in this game. The Razorbacks were 4-4 against winning teams. They also had a loss to 6-6 Missouri, so just a lot of quality opponents against Arkansas. One of the most difficult schedules in the country this year in the preseason and the postseason with those numbers kind of bears that out as well. The best win was either Cincinnati or Ole Miss. So even in a 6-6 finish, they beat a couple decent teams. They did lose to Texas A&M. That wasn't good. And Missouri to end the season, not good. The rest of the teams were good because all they played was good teams. Just a tough schedule, lots of injuries. I think R.J. Jefferson will be playing. I don't know if he's entering the transfer portal, but a good option quarterback there. A couple good guys as far as defensive ends and rolling up sack numbers. Again, I don't think they have. I haven't seen a lot of guys entering the transfer portal. It looks like for now it's a fairly complete roster as far as who'll be playing for both of these squads. So this could low-key be a very good game between two Power 5 teams. At least from an offensive perspective, we could see a lot of points in this one. 8 o'clock is North Carolina, who is 9-4, and number 15, Oregon, who's 9-3 on Fox for the Holiday Bowl. Again, this is one of the few games that is not on ESPN or the ESPN networks. Now, Oregon was 4-3 against winning teams. The best win either Utah or UCLA or both. They lost to Oregon State by 4, Washington by 3, and of course the blowout by 46 at the hands of Georgia earlier in the season before they really got things around. That first week was just brutal. Bo Nix may not play in this game. He has not been healthy. Hopefully he'll be okay. I'm not sure if he'll enter the NFL draft or what's going on for sure. The fact that it hasn't been stated yet, at least at the time of recording, is a good thing. Hopefully he'll be in for this game. This could be one of the top bowl games if both quarterbacks play. Drake May has not entered the transfer portal. Hopefully he will not. Hopefully he'll be playing for North Carolina. They've lost 3 straight games to end the season, including a bad one to Georgia Tech to start the slide against NC State and Clemson as well. They were 3-3 against winning teams. They did win at Duke, at Wake Forest, and against Pitt, so they did have a few nice scalps they can hang on the wall there. But just horrid defense, as we know. Drake May and Josh Downs, the wide receiver quarterback connection there. Duck, one of the top corners for North Carolina, has entered the transfer portal. So I don't know what difference that really makes for how horrid they've been in the secondary, but he was one of their top corners, and he is out for this game into the portal. But this could be this is going to be high up in my rankings for a top watch game. Even if there's some quarterback shenanigans on Oregon's side, I think they're going to have some depth there to run this offense, and this could be a top game. 2 top-notch offenses. They can't stop anybody on third down. They both struggle to stop the pass. They're not great against the run, but hopefully if Bo Nix is playing, he'll be healthy, and this should be a really competitive, really good game on a Wednesday night at 8 o'clock just after Christmas. At 9 o'clock, Texas Tech is 7-5. They're playing Ole Miss, who's 8-4 in the Texas Bowl. Texas Tech is 2-4 against winning teams. The best win was either Houston in double overtime or Texas in overtime. Quentin Ewers was not playing that game, and there would be arguments that Quentin Ewers missing would really impact how the offense ran. Hudson Card did just fine, though, I think. He's in the transfer portal now, forgot to mention that, so he'll be leaving Texas. But Quentin Ewers, throughout the rest of the season, I think proved that I'm not sure that he made a big difference in that offense. So I think that was a real good win for Texas Tech as well. Now, Tyler Shaw, the former Oregon Duck transfer, he was hurt in the first game of the season, went down. He's since returned. He's the 3 quarterbacks have played for this team, but he's 3-0 in the past 3 games now that he's back under center. It's been a little rough going offensively still, but it's resulted in wins, so that's a good thing. The defense has been getting cooked recently. It's been one of the calling cards of this team, and as of late, it hasn't been. So, Ole Miss, how badly do they want to be here? They faded down the stretch, losing 4 of 5 against better teams in the regular season. One of their wins was at Texas Tech on the road, but they lost to all the good teams they played in the back half of the schedule. 2-3 against winning teams overall. Their best win at this point looks like Troy in the opener, 28-10. Your other option is set over 7-5 Kentucky, so they have no wins over anybody. Jackson Dart, the former transfer there, leads one of the top rushing offenses in the country with a number of great young backs. They have 2 guys who will be in the NFL at some point in the future here, although they're too young to enter yet. So keep an eye on the backfield for Ole Miss. I think this is going to be a solid football game to keep an eye on. One team that wants to run the ball on offense and one that just wants to chuck it all over the yard. And I think we'll see some points in this one as well. Heading into Thursday, the 29th, got just one game. Syracuse and Minnesota at 2 o'clock in the Pinstripe Bowl, or How Far Can We Fall Bowl. Minnesota's 8-4, Syracuse is 7-5. Syracuse started 6-0, lost 5 straight, pulled out the season finale against Boston College to prevent the full reversal there. They're 3-5 against winning teams overall. The crappy finish started against Clemson. When they started that skid, they had a chance to win there. Fell apart in the second half of that game. It fell apart in the back half of the season altogether. They do have wins over Purdue and NC State. They have losses to Clemson, Notre Dame, Florida State, Wake Forest, Pitt, all good teams, but they were really blown the hell out a few times there as they just completely fell apart. The Gophers quietly won 4 of their last 5, although they're 0-4 against winning teams. Their best win was at Wisconsin and Madison. The Badgers, of course, finished 6-6, and if they lose their bowl game, they'll finish 6-7. So they might be 0-5 against bowl teams if they lose to Syracuse. Their losses came to all the good teams, all the teams that finished above them in the Big Ten West. We're talking Iowa, Illinois, Purdue, and they lost to Penn State as well. There's still no Tanner Morgan as far as I can tell. The backup there, Kala Kamanis. Ooh, I think I said it right. 4 of his 5 starts, he had fewer than 180 passing yards. It's really Mo Ibrahim or bust for them. One of the best running backs in the country in a running back heavy Big Ten there. Sean Tucker has come down the last season at Syracuse. His numbers have come down, but he's a top back as well. So this is going to be a game that's very focused on defense and running the football for 2 kind of under the radar backs as the season kind of wound down here. So it's kind of an under radar, probably low scoring defensive battle here. I think I said one game here on the 29th. We have a triple header, 5 o'clock. Number 13, Florida State's 9-3. Now they're matched up against a 6-6 team as well in Oklahoma for the Cheez-Its Bowl. Cheez-Its has sponsoring 2 games, I believe. Oklahoma's 1-4 against winning teams. The best win was probably their rival, Oklahoma State, who was 7-5. Their losses were bad early, Kansas State and TCU, but they turned out to obviously be 2 of the best teams in the Big 12 and the country. They lost 3 of their last 4, though, including a 3-point game to Baylor, 3-point game to West Virginia, and 3-point game in overtime to Texas Tech. So that was actually the worst stretch to end the season there of their entire season. It wasn't the early route where they were losing a bunch of games. Those turned out to be the better football teams. Now, Florida State, 3-3 against winning teams. The best one was LSU. In the opener, they won 5 straight to end the season, including at Syracuse and Florida. So not great teams, but still they're putting up a lot of points. The 3-game stretch against Wake Forest, at NC State, Clemson in the middle of the season were their only 3 losses by a combined 18 points, and they've been hot torching opponents since then. Jordan Travis, the quarterback, has actually come out and announced that he will be back to Florida State next season amidst all the transfer portal news that is coming out. So he will be back to lead a top, maybe 15 Florida State team next year. So this will be maybe an interesting game. It's possible Florida just blows the hell out of Oklahoma. Dylan Gabriel's still there at quarterback for the Sooners. It looked like the defense was slowly getting better. And then again in the last month, it did not. Now, Florida State has some standout players on the defensive end. They actually always have, even though they suffered the past few years. They've still sent defensive players to the NFL, and they can certainly give up points on the back end. This could be a good old-fashioned shootout, but Florida State right now appears to be the better football team. At 9 o'clock is the Alamo Bowl. Of course, we have Texas, number 20, at 8-4 in there against number 12, Washington, who's 10-2. This is one of the first big games on the slate. Now, Texas was only 2-4 against winning teams. The best wins were at Kansas State, in which they killed a drive, forced a turnover there by the driving Wildcats to win that game. They also beat UTSA, a really good football team, winner of the Conference USA, as we touched on earlier. Their losses, all winning teams by one possession: Alabama, Texas Tech, Oregon, Oklahoma State, and TCU. Washington was 3-1 against winning teams. They won 6 straight to finish the year. The best one was either Oregon or Oregon State. They did not play USC or Utah, and obviously did not make the Pacific 12 championship game. So unfortunately, we don't know where they fall amongst those two. They may have been the best team in the Pac-12. We don't know because of tiebreakers. They did not even make the game. They didn't play either team in the regular season. They did lose at UCLA, and then they had one of the most baffling losses of the season. They followed that up with a loss on the road to Arizona State after firing their coach. Very confusing loss there, but those are the only two. Otherwise, they would have been right in the playoff mix. So, a great offense. Passing leader Michael Penix with Washington, a great success story of a transfer quarterback. There were several there in the Pac-12 this season. And Texas, I expect to be handing the ball off a whole lot, controlling the clock, taking advantage of the defense of Washington, which can be physical up front sometimes. I don't know if Bijan Robinson will play in this game, but Roche Thompson behind him, who will be back next year to take over running back duties. I expect to get a lot of carries. He'll be playing. Ewers, I don't know if Ewers will be in the transfer portal because the Manning nephew is coming next year, the top recruit in the country. So Ewers might just straight up be out of the job, and he might be on his third school in 3 years if he hits the transfer portal. So I don't know what's going to happen there at quarterback. Bijan Robinson will probably be getting ready for the NFL draft. So I'm not sure what skill position players are going to be here for Texas or playing, but whoever is, it'll probably be a lot of handoffs to a really good running back, and this will still be a really, really good ball game. Friday, December 30th, starting at noon, number 23 NC State is 8-4. They're playing Maryland, who's 7-5 in the Mayo Bowl. Maryland is 1-4 against winning teams. They lost 3 in a row before crushing Rutgers in the closer. The best win was either SMU, who made a bowl game, or Michigan State, if you want to go to a Power 5 team, who did not make a bowl. So not great wins there. All of the good Big Ten teams beat them, and they lost on the road to Wisconsin as well with a banged-up Tulia. NC State was a shocking 5-3 against winning teams. They're on their 4th quarterback of the year. The best win was at North Carolina and double overtime or Florida State, depending on how you think about those teams. The losses were bad. They were blown out a few times. They had a bad loss at home to Boston College towards the back end of the season. Hopefully MJ Jordan will be healthy to go. He's been banged up, I believe. I'm not sure why he hasn't been playing because they used quarterback number 4 to round out the last couple of games of the season. But he's going to be the future there. Leary, projected to be an NFL player in the preseason, got hurt, didn't play well prior to that. He's actually in the transfer portal. But if MJ's ready to go, this will be a good quarterback battle. Hopefully Tulia is healthy. He was hurt way back against Ohio State. Hopefully he'll be healthy and ready to go. This could be 2 really good quarterbacks and 2 really good defenses going up against each other. The Wolfpack linebacking core has been good this season in particular, and be leading them to a number of these wins. I don't know if there's going to be a ton of opt-outs, and if either quarterback is out, MJ in particular, and we're going to some of the other reserves there, or Tulia's out for Maryland, it's going to shift the dynamics. But for right now, the Mayo Bowl is looking like kind of an under-the-radar good football game there. 2 o'clock, Pittsburgh is 8-4. They're playing 18th ranked UCLA, who is 9-3. This one's on CBS. This is the Sun Bowl. Pitt was 2-3 against winning teams this year. Best win was either Duke or Syracuse, which is kind of gross. They won the last 4 games. Both of those wins came in that run, so they're peaking, right? They're peaking. Losses to Tennessee in overtime on one hand, and blowout losses at North Carolina and Louisville at home, and a loss to Georgia Tech as well. So they've had some highs and they've had some lows. They're on the cusp of beating peak Tennessee early and taking them out of the possibly the conversation for a championship much earlier than anyone else in the season. And they also took a loss to Georgia Tech, who's all the way at the bottom end of the pendulum as well. So a wide range of outcomes for what you're getting from Pitt. UCLA was 3-2 against winning teams. They beat Washington and Utah. They were upset by Arizona after the Oregon blowout basically ended their shot at a playoff. They played both USC and Cal close after that, splitting those games, and they lost to the final three and finished 3-3 in the back half of the season overall. Just one of these teams like Ole Miss that was on the cusp of really breaking through and pulling some big upsets and did not get there. TCU was kind of the one to do that this year, obviously. So how will they be coming into the bowl game? Dorian Thompson-Robinson, I think, has finally exhausted all of his eligibility. I haven't seen any news on him yet. I think he would play rather than sit out if he's going to the NFL. I don't foresee him going into the transfer portal, so I just expect him to be playing in this bowl game. Pitt lost their quarterback, Slavic, into the transfer portal, but he hasn't been a real difference maker anyways. They've played a couple different guys here. It's going to come down to Israel, and I can't pronounce his last name, one of the top backs for Pittsburgh, one of the best backs in the country in running the football and some good defense, particularly in that front. And UCLA, of course, is going to hand the ball off to Zach Charbonnet, and Dorian Thompson-Robinson is going to pilot that offense as well. So this could be another really, really good game. I have it ranked very highly. That's the 2 o'clock on CBS. At 3:30, we have number 19 South Carolina, number 21 Notre Dame in the Gator Bowl. A couple of surprising teams, really. I don't know how either one got here. Both started 1-2 and helped shape the playoffs. Notre Dame was 4-3 against winning teams. The best win was Clemson, although they did beat North Carolina too, both of the ACC participants. They had the unreal loss to Stanford, another how the hell did we get here moment. They lost to Marshall, although that isn't as bad now. They were 8-4. The Thundering Herd finished the season 8-4. They did lose to Ohio State and USC on the road, although those don't look bad at all now. South Carolina was 3-1 against winning teams. If you include all the 6-6 bowl games that they lost to, they're 3-4 against teams 500 or better. The best win, take your pick, Tennessee or Clemson. The losses, Georgia, Arkansas, Missouri, and Florida all blew them the hell out. That's why you thought going into the last 2 weeks of the season, they'd take a couple of losses and finish 6-6 with not very good offense or defense, and they were doing well scoring on special teams with special teams play earlier in the season. And all of a sudden, they just erupted. Spencer Rattler doubled his touchdown totals on the year with the last 2 games from the first 10. So it's just wild. South Carolina just completely turning things around in the last 2 weeks of the season, looking really good, looking really dangerous. Notre Dame did it kind of throughout the year. Of course, their quarterback, they're already on their backup, Payne or Pine, I can never get it right, and I always have their games on mute because they're not always that exciting. But they're going to be down to their third quarterback, so that really hurts what they're going to be able to do as they try to limit South Carolina's all of a sudden explosive offense. And this could be a really intriguing matchup if Notre Dame's able to sustain something on the run, on the ground, and put someone back there that can throw the ball a bit. I kind of just want to see if Spencer Rattler and South Carolina can continue some kind of good cohesive gameplay going forward and notch another top 25 win before ending the season and heading into next year. At 4 o'clock is Barstool's game that they're going to be live streaming. It's the Arizona Bowl. Ohio's 9-4, Wyoming's 7-5, a MAC Mountain West battle here. Ohio's 0-2 against winning teams. I don't know what their best win is at Miami of Ohio because they're in a bowl game and it was on the road, I guess. The losses, they were blown out by Penn State and Iowa State in Power 5 play. They lost in overtime to Kent State, although that team can always put up points. The starting quarterback, Curtis Rourke, not Rambus, I always combine those. Curtis Rourke is out, and CJ Harris wasn't great in the conference championship loss to Toledo. So I'm not sure what to expect from this team. Wyoming is 1-5 against winning teams. The only win they got against a good squad was Air Force. So that's a thin schedule. They played Boise State close, but was blown out by anyone else that was halfway decent. They can't really throw the football. Neither of these teams will have much success doing that. They might as well shake hands and agree not to throw any passes past the line of scrimmage in this game. CJ Harris did show that he could run a little bit when he took over the starting job at the end of the regular season. He ran for 3 touchdowns, but then didn't do a whole lot in the conference championship game. So I'm not sure what the deal was with that. And this is just a couple teams that are going to look okay record-wise when you're staring at them. But this is just not going to be a really exciting game. Again, it's going to be exclusively streamed on Barstool's site, I believe, and on their socials accounts. And it's just too bad because they could have had a really good quarterback from Ohio here, at least, in Curtis Rourke to showcase. And that's just not going to be the case, it looks like. 8 o'clock finally brings us a really big hitter. Number 6 Tennessee at 10-2 and number 7 Clemson at 11-2 in the freaking Orange Bowl. Tennessee is 4-2 against winning teams. They won at LSU and beat Alabama, of course. They lost at Georgia and at South Carolina, of course, in big blowouts in which they look completely outmatched. Joe Milton didn't do a lot against Vanderbilt in the closer, and they rolled up 363 yards on the ground. He'll be asked to do more in the bowl game, obviously, with Hendon Hooker out, so we'll see what happens there, but we're just not sure what to project. He has a huge arm. They bring him in for multiple plays to throw Hail Marys and to throw deep passes. So he's certainly seen the field, and he was supposed to be the starter heading into last season, so he's certainly been around and has experience. And Clemson, 6-2 against winning teams. The best win was either North Carolina, NC State, or on the road at Florida State. Take your pick. Losses, the blowout loss to Notre Dame, and a 1-point loss to South Carolina, of course, to end the season. Cade Klubenik is under center. He runs, he throws, he might do other tricks. Not entirely certain. This team doesn't seem to have a lot of guys in the transfer portal right now. They seem to be maintaining the team moving forward. Maybe the quarterback change in the championship helped to maintain the cohesivity of the staff and is showing the team that they really believe in what they're doing here, and they won't have guys jumping into the transfer portal other than DJ Ungale, who's already hopped in there. So it's possible we'll have 2 pretty complete rosters here other than Hendon Hooker, which is unfortunate. And this could be just one of the top games on the shelf here. Saturday, December 31st, starts at noon with number 5 Alabama, who's 10-2, and number 9 Kansas State, who's 10-3 in the Sugar Bowl. Now, Alabama's 3-2 against winning teams. They beat Texas and a road win at Ole Miss. Top 2 scalps on the wall. Kansas State's 3-3 against winning teams. Beat TCU in the Big 12 Championship Conference game. And then they beat Oklahoma State and Texas Tech. So they really didn't have any big wins outside of that. Losses to Tulane, TCU the first time, at Texas in a close one there. I assume Adrian Martinez will be healthy and ready to go for this game. Will Howard looks like the better thrower. Well, he is the better thrower, but he hasn't been much on the ground where Martinez excels. It'd actually be very interesting to see if some system was built where both quarterbacks could play at the same time. I'm not sure if that's going to happen. I'm not sure if Martinez might enter the transfer portal. Hard to tell right now. But regardless, there's going to be a good quarterback there for Kansas State. And Alabama's had half the team enter the transfer portal. Bryce Young is probably going to sit out and not play because he's getting ready for the NFL. Nick Saban, you're not even going to see a bunch of backups that are going to be promoted to starting positions next year because Nick Saban's going to hit the transfer portal, bring in a bunch of his own guys, bring in a bunch of top recruits, and you're just going to see a lot of backups basically at Alabama playing. So I don't think this game is going to be quite as interesting. That doesn't mean that Alabama's talent is not going to be better than Kansas State's. Actually, this could be a weird one where the line swings heavily in Kansas State's favor, but Alabama still somehow pulls it out with the talent that's still left on that team. But this is going to be a game where like everyone that you know from Alabama is in the transfer portal and nobody's able to play for this game. Also at noon will be the Music City Bowl between Iowa and Kentucky. It's only like the 10th time they've played in a bowl game. This one will be on ABC. Both of the teams are 7-5 and not very good. Iowa is 2-3 against winning teams. The best one was against Purdue when they beat them on the road 24-3. They lost to Iowa State and Nebraska, who didn't make bowl games. They were thumped by the really good Big Ten teams and better teams in the conference. Kentucky's 2-4 against winning teams. The best win was either Mississippi State or Louisville. They lost to the top half of the SEC teams and Vanderbilt, who didn't make a bowl game. Just not great. Quarterbacks will be out. Petrus for Iowa, and for Kentucky, Will Levis will probably be entering going for the NFL draft, I should say. Iowa has a couple really talented backs, and the defense isn't at the level it was last year. They'll be putting pressure on whoever's throwing the ball for Kentucky. The backups were not very good this year, and that offensive line has been horrific. The defense has not been too bad as a total group. Not sure if there'll be guys in the transfer portal there as well. This is going to be a gross, low-scoring game, and I don't know if either quarterback is going to be doing much of anything, depending on who hits the field. I don't know much about either of these backup quarterbacks, really, even though Will Levis missed some time for Kentucky this year. This could be really gross, potentially, even though there's some talent at both running back spots for both of these teams. At 4 o'clock and 8 o'clock are the two games you've been waiting for, of course. The playoffs are going to get underway. The Fiesta Bowl is going to host number 3 TCU and number 2 Michigan. TCU is 5-1 against winning teams this year. If you add the 6-6 bowl teams that they have played as well, they're 8-1 overall against teams that are 500 and better in that particular case. The best win was Kansas State. The only loss was Kansas State. Arguably, I think they should have counted the touchdown in overtime, and then that would have put a much different weight on the Kansas State shoulders to score a touchdown to go to double overtime, but that is not what happened. So this team, the defense has looked a lot better. They can put some pressure on teams. They can certainly disrupt what you're doing on offense. Max Duggan is going to the Heisman Trophy ceremony and looks like a really good quarterback, and I think they can certainly this is a toss-up game, I think. I think Michigan is the better football team. They are 6-0 against winning teams. They also have a win against a 6-6 bowl game team in there, so they're 7-0 against 500 teams or better. They beat Ohio State, Penn State, Purdue, and Illinois, some of their top teams. Michigan, I think, will be able to run the ball very effectively against TCU. It'll be whether they can shut down Johnston for the Horned Frogs there, the Horny Frogs, at the receiver position, and be able to kind of slow down what Max Duggan is doing. And I think that they'll kind of replicate more or less what Kansas State was able to put down, but at a higher level. Will J.J. McCarthy be forced to make difficult throws on a consistent basis because he wasn't even able to do that really against Purdue? Again, not to knock him as a top 10 quarterback per se, or top 20 quarterback in college football. The point is you're trying to be like a top 5 guy. You're trying to win a national championship here. I still don't think that'll be something that he'll have to do here against TCU. I tend to lean Michigan's way, but I think this will be a very, very good semifinal game, but I do tend to lean Michigan's way. But this is going to be a tight one. Of course, the 8 o'clock Peach Bowl with 13-0 Georgia and 11-1 Ohio State will as well. Ohio State 5-1 against winning teams. Penn State and Notre Dame among the victories there. Georgia 6-0 against winning teams. They now have wins over Tennessee, Oregon, and LSU. They have road wins against Kentucky, Mississippi State, South Carolina. Those turned out pretty good. If you add bowl teams, Florida on a neutral site for the cocktail party, and a road win to Missouri on there, it shapes up to be a really nice resume for them. Of course, up until the last couple weeks, it didn't even look that great. Through the first 7 games, Florida, you weren't sure if they were going to make a bowl game, or Missouri. South Carolina didn't even look good until it won the last 2 games of the season. So those rounded out into at least a couple quality wins in Florida and Missouri, and a really good win in South Carolina. And of course, the Oregon win still looks solid, as does the Tennessee win, even though we've had some quarterback injuries and a couple losses there. So overall, this has been a nice rounded schedule for them, and of course knocking out LSU as well. But will they win the national championship? Now, Ohio State can certainly spread out a number of receivers and weapons and do damage, but will they make adjustments during the game? Because that was one of the big problems against Michigan. Michigan took what Ohio State offered up, and then Ohio State continued to offer those looks when it looked like Michigan wouldn't be able to sustain its offense, and just was able to keep building from that. The offense for Georgia this year has looked a lot better, even if the defense has taken a step back. I believe they lost 9 or 10 starters from last season's team. So this is very much full of players that have not received national championship rings. We've got a lot of fresh faces in the mix here, so there's not a lot of complacency with where they are, and I think this is going to be a very, very good ball game, as is TCU Michigan. We could have some weird things happen here. I do tend to lean Georgia to still win the national championship, although I'm real close to picking Michigan. I still don't actually know, although at this particular time, it's kind of a toss-up for me, but I'm leaning a little bit more Georgia's way with not knowing whether McCarthy can make key throws if Georgia keys in on him and forces him to do so. Stetson Bennett seems to be able to accomplish that, even if they don't have the perimeter talent on the outside that even Ohio State has, or that Michigan seems to have. They seem to have the fewest weapons at the receiver position than anyone in the playoffs. I like two really good close ball games, and I like Georgia right now over Michigan in the national championship, with Michigan's struggles in the red zone becoming more prevalent, and Georgia's managing to outlast that game and put pressure on J.J. McCarthy, who's not able to make key plays down the stretch. That's how I'm leaning right now, but those two games are being played on December 31st. That is a Friday. Now, Saturday, New Year's Day, there are no bowl games. Just a weird occurrence with that being a Sunday. No bowl games on the first of the year. So Monday, January 2nd is going to be your full slew of regularly scheduled programming, starting at noon with number 22 Mississippi State at 8-4, and Illinois, who's 8-4 as well, in the Quest Bowl. Now, MSU is 1-4 against winning teams. The best win was the last game of the season in the Egg Bowl against Ole Miss in the rivalry game. They lost at Alabama, at Kentucky, at LSU, the home to Georgia. All the good, really good SEC teams they lost to. When you add the 6-6 teams, they're 4-4 against squads that went 500 or better. So that's something, I guess. They're the best of the average. Illinois is 3-2 against winning teams. The best win was either Iowa or Minnesota. They had bad losses to Indiana and Michigan State. They were crushed by Michigan and Purdue. Both teams had really good seasons, all things considered, but were kind of disappointing in how they ended, I think. Will Rogers for Mississippi State is still a really prolific quarterback there who will very much want to throw the ball. And Brown for Illinois, one of the top backs in the country. I've said that several times, but again, he led the nation in rushing several times, and he will be the force there. A much better defense in Illinois as well. A lot of great interior pressure created by a couple of defensive tackles, and this should be a really good ball game with very contrasting styles between these SEC and Big Ten teams. This is on ESPN2. At 1 o'clock on ESPN, number 16 Tulane at 11-2. Winners of the American Conference will be playing number 10 USC 11-2. Losers of the Pac-12, but a very good football team nevertheless. Tulane was 6-1 against winning teams this year. The best win was at Kansas State. Don't forget they beat the Wildcats earlier in the year. Obviously, they were Big 12 winners, as we just discussed. They had bad loss to Southern Miss, but the Eagles did make a bowl game, and they got revenge against Central Florida, who they lost to earlier in the season in the conference championship game, where they blew them the hell out. This is the Cotton Bowl, by the way. USC 5-2 against winning teams. Did you know that? 5-2. They won at UCLA, at Oregon State. They beat Notre Dame, and of course had the two losses to Utah. Utah housed Oregon twice last year to wrap up a Pac-12 championship. Of course, grabbed 2 wins over USC here to win the Pac-12 championship. Just funny how that works out. But again, Washington not in the mix at all. It just seems very, very strange. Caleb Williams might be out for this game, and that would completely change the dynamic. The backup doesn't seem very good. I don't have his name in front of me at the moment, but has just not been able to cut the mustard, to the point where you kind of have to wonder if Caleb knowingly is not able to play in this game with so much prep time. Maybe you start to really change some things around the offense if you're Lincoln Riley, whether it's go to like a third string guy or start to do some really weird stuff with Jordan Addison, if he even plays the receiver there, receiver of the year last season, and start to do some more option-y stuff or go more run-heavy, although they might be down 2 running backs for this game as well. It's just tough because this team is built around skill position players, and it's entirely possible they're down their top quarterback, running back, receiver, second running back, center. So there could be a lot of problems here for what would otherwise be a great game, even if everyone was healthy and ready to go. Tulane's look better, particularly on offense as the year's gone along. A great Pratt-Spears combo at quarterback and at running back, and they're able to just roll up points. The defense is getting better. They're really good at shutting down the pass, not quite as good at shutting down the run, but of course, USC's love to run the ball. This would be an excellent matchup, so we'll have to see kind of who's healthy or not for this particular game. Not a lot of guys in the transfer portal as of right now for either team. Don't expect that. Just need health to make it a really, really high-level game. The 1 o'clocker on ABC. Remember, but on the big New Year's Day with all the games going on, you do have some that are going on at the same time. This is the other Cheez-Its attachment, the Citrus Bowl. The Cheez-It Citrus Bowl has got the Cheez-Its sponsor as well. Number 17, LSU is 9-4, and Purdue is 8-5. The two runners up for their conference championship games. LSU's 3-3 against winning teams. You add another 3 wins in when you include 6-6 teams. The best win was Alabama. Losses at Texas A&M, which was wild because they didn't really have a bad loss otherwise. Jaden Daniels might be out for this game. The backup quarterback, a young guy, might be the future of this football team. He did okay. He certainly rolled up yards in the SEC championship game and looked capable of running the offense. It's just that he didn't really make an impact. It seems like there's been a lot of good traction about what he can do moving forward. Garrett Nussmeier, who had 2 touchdowns and a pick on 15 for 27 passing for almost 300 yards. So probably not a bad backup to have in this particular game. Certainly showing he can do a little bit there. Purdue was 3-4 against winning teams. Their best win was at Illinois. All teams that they lost to are in bowl games. At Syracuse, at Wisconsin were probably the worst in road games, so arguably they don't have any really bad blemishes on the schedule. But I mean, they struggled against Florida Atlantic and just really didn't look elite throughout the season. Charlie Jones and Aiden O'Connell, obviously the great wide receiver and quarterback combo there. They can't really run the ball, much like LSU, which has struggled outside of Jaden Daniels to find offense. It's kind of a 2-man show for Purdue, whereas LSU really depends on Jaden Daniels to get things going on the ground. There might not be a lot of running the ball at all in either of these games, particularly if Jaden Daniels is playing for LSU. But he is in a walking boot, I think. So not completely sure about that. If he does play, this is going to be a really good football game. If he doesn't play regardless, seeing the freshman in there could be a glimpse of the future of LSU. And this should be, regardless, a good football game here in the Cheez-Its Citrus Bowl. Try to make sense of that title. At 5 o'clock, number 11, Penn State is 10-2. They're playing number 8, Utah, who is 10-3 in the Rose Bowl, the granddaddy of them all. Penn State's 3-2 against winning teams. The best win's Purdue, though. They lost to Michigan and Ohio State. Basically, they lost to the best 2 teams and got mopped up everyone else, I should say. Not sure if we're going to get Sean Clifford here at quarterback or if we will get the freshman Aller, the 6'5 kid, a local kid who has always wanted to be a Penn State Nittany Lion. Yeah, we'll have him moving forward, of course, in the future here. So it'd be nice to see him get the ball more. They have 2 fantastic freshman running backs, of course, Caton Allen and Nick Singleton. This could be an elite offense moving forward. So good. 3 great freshmen and just really good. Really good matchup here against Utah. 5-2 against winning teams. They beat USC twice, obviously, Oregon State. They had losses on the road to UCLA and Oregon, but this has been a great football team otherwise. They did have the Florida loss in there, too. Forgot to add that one in my notes. Okay. Florida in the opener on just a tough formation, tough play call to end the game. Going for a game-winning touchdown that turned into an interception. And then, the 2 tough road losses there in a very tough, top-heavy Pacific 10 conference there. Cam Rising has looked really good the past couple of weeks after struggling towards the back end of the season there. Kincaid is one of the best tight ends in the country. They have a ground game. The defense has struggled a little bit recently, but it's not been nearly as good this season. But it's one of those situations where the offense has been very proficient. It's been one of the handful of offenses converting over 50% on third down. I believe that's still the rate. Very proficient there. And again, Penn State, a very good offense as well. And we might see some more freshmen on the field, and that more of the future there. So just a great matchup here. One of the top games both to see how far these teams have come this season and possibly in talent reflecting forward. Remember, Penn State's played some great games recently. They played, or I should say just the Rose Bowl in general. We had, of course, Utah, Ohio State last year. We had Penn State and USC not too long ago, and I expect this to be another top-notch Rose Bowl football game. And speaking of the future, that one will close out the season for that particular slate. We'll, of course, have the national championship game a week later, Monday, January 9th at 7:30 on ESPN. Some of these get kicked way back, 8 o'clock, 8:30, 9 o'clock start times on the East Coast, which is just way too late. This one probably won't actually kick off until 8 o'clock, but that's Monday, January 9th, a week after the Rose Bowl on Monday. So that Penn State Utah will be the last one before we know who's the best team in college football. If you're still with me, I did power rank every single game into 4 categories: popcorn, check-in, background, and watch hoops. So my top watches here, I have the Peach Bowl between Ohio State and Georgia, and the Fiesta Bowl between TCU and Michigan as my top 2. No surprise there. I have the Rose Bowl between Penn State and Utah as number 3 on my list. The Cure Bowl between UTSA and Troy is number 4. Again, a couple of top 25 teams here. 2 of the best non-Power 5 teams, and just a really good battle here. This is basically a coin flip game. I think Troy's favored by 1 point, but a really good, rounded defensive, a little bit leaning defensive team in Troy, and a great offensive team and a great quarterback in UTSA in the Kier Bowl. The Cotton Bowl is number 5 for me. Tulane and USC. This would drop if a number of players are out for USC, but I think this would still be a very good ball game here. I think Tulane can hang. I do have Tennessee and Clemson in my number 6 spot. No Hendon Hooker. Obviously, if he was playing, that would be very different. But Clemson with Klubenik will be a very different look. And Tennessee, even with Joe Milton, should be very interesting to watch and should still have a lot of top skill position players there. Then at my number 7, I have LSU and Purdue in the Citrus Bowl. The LSU Tigers, Jaden Daniels out would be a problem, but you could still see a nice young freshman quarterback there, and Purdue with Aiden O'Connell presumably in a nice matchup there. The Holiday Bowl is my number 8 between Oregon and North Carolina. Again, hopefully both quarterbacks will be in and healthy, and this could just be a foot race. This has got a 72-point over-under, the highest over-under out of any of the bowl games. Next, I have Texas and Washington in the Alamo Bowl. Texas a slight favorite. No, Texas almost a touchdown favorite. This could be a great football game. This has a 68-point over-under, one of the highest over-unders as well. Only a few ahead of it. And this is going to be a great football game too, even if we have a few players out on Texas's side. But for the most part, this should be pretty complete rosters and a good football game. I have running up my top 10, I have Pitt and UCLA in the Sun Bowl. I just think this is going to be a great kind of contrast here, leaning on the run game for Pittsburgh and a nice front 7, and for UCLA, also leaning and very physical in the trenches and a running back, but more on the passing attack as well, a great mobile quarterback. Just a little bit different in what they can offer from the palette on the offensive side of things. Sugar Bowl is just next on the list here. Alabama and Kansas State. This should arguably be dropped a little bit lower, as I've been reading the notes for all the Alabama's players being out, but I do have that as a high watch game right now. Mississippi State and Illinois in the Quest Bowl. Then I have Notre Dame and South Carolina in the Gator Bowl. The only question there is who's going to quarterback for Notre Dame. Then I have the Jimmy Kimmel Bowl between Washington State and Fresno State. Should be a great game between 2 quarterbacks there. Do have the Cheez-Its Bowl between Oklahoma and Florida State. Could be a lot of offense in that one. The Fenway Bowl between Cincinnati and Louisville. Very interesting, with one coach leaving one program for another. Then I have the Texas Bowl between Texas Tech and Ole Miss. Again, very different offensive styles there. Pace of play is going to be very quick, I think, with Texas Tech. 69.5 point over under, very high there. Then the Military Bowl with UCF and Duke, a very interesting Power 5, non-Power 5 matchup there. A coin flip game, 1 point spread going UCF's way at the moment. And the Mayo Bowl rounds out my popcorn top watch games. That is Maryland and NC State. Could see a good quarterback, hopefully in Tulia for Maryland, and a very creative defense there, and a good defense for NC State, and hopefully the quarterback moving forward in MJ Jordan. So that is my number 19 spot, and rounded out my top appointment date watching for me. The next level to kind of keep on my radar and kind of take a peek at and see where the game is at starts at my number 20. Yes, my number 20 spot with the Liberty Bowl. Kansas and Arkansas, both 6-6. The 69 point over under, of course, indicates the lack of defense and a lot of offense we should get in this game. Hopefully both top quarterbacks are in this one, Jane Daniels and KJ Jefferson for these teams. Then I have the Hawaii Bowl between Middle Tennessee and San Diego State. One plays a lot of offense, one plays a lot of defense. Then the Gasparilla Bowl between Wake Forest and Missouri. The Armed Forces Bowl between Baylor and Air Force. The New Mexico Bowl between SMU and BYU. 71 point over under, second highest over under at the moment. Pinstripe Bowl between Syracuse and Minnesota. 42 point over under, one of the lowest of the day. I think third lowest over under, not of the day, of the bowl game schedule. Could be a slog, but we do have two great running backs there, so I do have it a little higher on the marking. Florida and number 14 Oregon State in the Las Vegas Bowl are next on my list. This is getting worse and worse as time moves forward, as Florida State's players are dropping like flies, and no Anthony Richardson, but I do have that as one I will check on right now. And finally, the Frisco Bowl is my number 27. North Texas and Boise State. North Texas loses a coach, but will still play a lot of offense there. Boise State still breaking in a new quarterback and a good defense there. So I will be checking in to see how that one is going. And that is my number 27th ranking and rounds out my check-in tier. Now, the next one are games I'll certainly have on in the background as I'm doing other things. And that starts with my number 28, the Boca Raton Bowl. Liberty and Toledo, 8-4 and 8-5 teams. Too bad I couldn't rank them higher. They've just kind of sucked in the back end of the season, and I'm not sure they were super great teams to begin with. The Music City Bowl, Iowa and Kentucky. Two teams that might not be playing with starting quarterbacks and have kind of dragged throughout the year. This has got a 31.5 point over under, the lowest of the day by almost 10 points. 31.5 point over under. That is insane. It should almost be lower on my list. The Guarantee Rate Bowl is in my 30 spot. 6-6 Wisconsin and 7-5 Oklahoma State. Wisconsin, Oklahoma State. 43.5 point over under. No quarterbacks in this one either. Two Power 5 teams that have struggled as well. One of the lowest over unders of the day. Again, third lowest, I believe, at 43.5. The New Orleans Bowl is next. Western Kentucky and South Alabama. It's too bad. This would have jumped like 10 spots for me if Austin Reed was playing for Western Kentucky, and we'd get to see the really good passing offense for this team, the number 2 passer in the country, playing against a really good defensive team in South Alabama. But as it is, he's entering the transfer portal, and there might be some other stuff going on there. And South Alabama will probably just beat the hell out of them. Next, I have the Idaho Potato Bowl. 8-win Eastern Michigan is usually very good. They're playing San Jose State, who has 7 wins, but this is just not great quality teams right here. Independence Bowl, 6-win Louisiana, 7-win Houston. Houston's still going to be a heavy favorite here despite the season they've had. Then I have the First Responder Bowl between Memphis and Utah State, a couple 6-6 teams. a game where anything could literally happen. Still a good offense in Memphis and some experience in Utah State, but things just haven't gone either of those teams' way this year. And that ends my background, games to have on the background. Starting with my number 35, these are just games I'm not going to watch. These are my watch hoops instead games. The Birmingham Bowl, Coastal Carolina 9-3, great season, but Grayson Michal is probably not going to be playing in this game, and that means their opponent, the 7-win East Carolina Pirates, awesome uniforms, are almost double-digit favorites. It's going to be one of the biggest spreads on the entire slate of bowl games, and not watchable. The other quality players have entered the transfer portal as well for that ball club, and it's going to be tough sledding there. The Myrtle Beach Bowl's next. Marshall's 8-4. They're playing UConn, who's 6-6. UConn's just not very good, and Marshall's actually okay. They're almost 9-point favorites. The Thundering Herd are. Then the Bahamas Bowl. Miami of Ohio 6-6. They're playing UAB, who's 6-6, and UAB's almost double-digit favorites. You know why? Because although they lose games, that's still a really well-coached program. They have a really good running back in McBride, but this is the first bowl game of the season, so I'll probably still have it on regardless anyways, but it's not something I'm necessarily going to know it's really on. Then Arizona Bowl, this is between 9-4 Ohio and Wyoming, who's 7-5. Again, no quarterback for Ohio. That would bump it up at least a few spots, but and they're still favored in this game. So what does that tell you? The Camellia Bowl, Georgia Southern 6-6, good passing offense there, but they're playing Buffalo, a not very good MAC team. Had to reschedule and nearly lost against the worst team in the conference just to get to eligibility. Quick Lane Bowl and Lending Tree Bowl are last two on the list here, and these are bad. New Mexico State 6-6 and Bowling Green 6-6 in the Quick Lane Bowl and the Lending Tree Bowl. Southern Mississippi, who's 6-6, playing the only 5-win team to make a bowl game, and that is the Rice Owls. Probably could have skipped those two bowl games this year. So there you go, your power rankings. I will have the link to my bowl game pick'em just for funsies to kind of get you excited for the bowl game season, get you thinking about things a little bit. If you'd like to enter, that will be in the episode description. Thank you for hanging with me for a long one. Thank you for listening to the episodes, and I appreciate it. Enjoy your holidays. I'm going on vacation. We'll touch on hoops when I get back. Thank you very much.
All my blessings, all my blessings. All my blessings, all my blessings. All my blessings, all my blessings. All my blessings, all my blessings.
I need my blessings every penny. Daily counting every single one, I'm seeing plenty. Level up and watch that beat turn into a